You're listening to the Smash the Box podcast, your source of inspiration for life and business. Inspiring stories and success secrets from the world of business, entrepreneurs, health, sport, spirituality, coaching, as well as everyday people with inspiring stories that the world needs to hear. Join your host and inspirator, Mark Pitcher, life and leadership coach and inspirational speaker, on a journey to finding your purpose, living your passion, and making an impact. Welcome to Smash the Box. Founder of Killing Kittens, KK to its followers, Emma Sayle has been described as a leader in female sexual liberation and empowerment. Go me, she laughs. After attending an all-girls boarding school in the Middle East, along with a very controlling father, Emma tells of the mixed messages she received growing up. During term time, I was being told the world is equal for men and women, but I saw a very different setup at home and in society. The fire started burning from an early age. An early PR job working for the Erotica Show catapulted her into the adult world, where she encountered some weird and wonderful people. Yet still she found it to be male-dominated. Inspired by the success of Ann Summers on the High Street and Sex in the City, she created KK, her own global tribe, with an online and offline community which hosts regular parties. Emma is passionate about women being more vocal about what they want sexually without fear of judgment. There are two strict rules for the parties. 1, men can only attend a party if accompanied by a woman, and 2, men are not allowed to approach women. It has to be the other way round. She has lost friends and a previous boyfriend over it, but is unrepentant. This is our time, she says emphatically. Recently crowdfunded, Killing Kittens, KK, is growing at 1,000 miles an hour. She's also created a safe date app for women and has an extreme sports fundraising group called Sisterhood as a yin to her yang, which recently organised a channel swim earlier this year. Listen with open ears, open eyes, and an open mind to this empowering podcast. Hi and welcome to another Smash the Box podcast with me, Mark Pitcher. Today I am delighted to be in the company of Emma Sayle. Welcome, Emma.
Thanks for having me on.
My absolute pleasure. Emma, you are the founder of something called Killing Kittens, which I'm going to be asking you all about. You're a mum.
Yep.
And you have been described in the popular press as a leader in female sexual liberation and empowerment.
Go me.
Not everyone can say that. And I usually begin with how we met. So just briefly, which was very random. And we've only just worked out, like walking in today, our mutual connection. So we believe we have Amanda Scott.
Yeah.
So Amanda, if you're listening to this.
I always say all my connections are via alcohol. So yeah, so that figures.
Yeah. Who's featured on this very podcast. So yeah, I think I was posting something on LinkedIn, and you popped up and you liked something that I posted, and literally it sort of flashed up in front of my eyes, and I thought, I had a look at your profile. I thought, you're interesting, and you are, and everyone else is about to find out how interesting, and so it's great. And sometimes I like those sort of random things
exactly.
that just
how life should be.
The universe conspires to bring us together, and here we are. So let's just begin wherever you want to, Emma, but perhaps a little bit about your story and, Killing Kittens and why and what is it?
Briefly, Killing Kittens it's 14 years old, and it came about, and I think you got to go back to I had a childhood. I was at an all-girls boarding school for 10 years, but I was living out in the Middle East for most of that, with a very controlling father. As well, so I had this mixed messages of, in the term time, I was, learning that I could go out and rule the world and be whoever I wanted to be, and the world was equal when it came to men and women. And then, sort of in the holiday times, I was seeing a very oppressed setup, both at home and in the society I was living in. So I always say, whenever you launch something, especially if you launch something that's that kind of out there, sort of slightly trailblazing, with people saying, what the hell are you doing type, business that I would say, it comes from, there's that fire that burns in you, and and I say that it's sort of, the fire was burnt from a very early age and was just burning and being stoked. And I had a couple of nasty experiences in my early 20s. I went into work in financial PR in the city and had a few sort of sexual harassment issues with where I ended up complaining and sort of being told that I'd be a troublemaker if I took it further. And that was by the HR director, who happened to be a female. So it's sort of, again, the fire was burning. And I went into entertainment PR and started helping with the PR for the big Erotica Show, which sort of got me into the adult world of weird and wonderful, things which, being a 22, 23-year-old, I met sort of weird and wonderful, crazy people, and but found that it was all very male dominated, and all the brands and all the shows and every industry, from the parties to sex toys to lingerie, it was actually all men running these businesses. And it was sort of the same time that Sex and the City was out, and Summers had hit the high street, and Jacqueline Gold's always been sort of one of my sort of sheroes in life. And I just thought there was all this talk of, this female sexual revolution going on. And again, I was seeing this mixed messages that was being spoken about. And it's what a lot of my clients wanted to be more female friendly. But in actual society, it's sort of, if women friends of mine were having one night stands, they were doing it so quietly and secretly and didn't really want to tell anyone because they, sort of being slut shamed and thought that they were dirty for doing it. And, and men, and I had, good men friends of mine saying, oh, I've met this girl, they're lovely, they're great, but they're not girlfriend material because they've, slept with loads of men. And it's just sort of, I was thinking, what the hell? This is, this is just all wrong. And I just thought there's nowhere out there where women can actually feel in control and sort of own their sexuality in a safe space, and feel completely empowered by that and without any judgment. And so it was actually, as I said earlier, everything happens with alcohol. I was in Ibiza and hadn't slept for 3 days at a friend's wedding, and it was a very wild wedding, hedonistic wedding. And someone who couldn't make the wedding phoned in and said to the agreement, you guys just all sat around killing kittens right now. And we had this whole conversation about what that meant, that every time you masturbate, God kills a kitten. So if you're killing a kitten, then you're having a wank. Right. So you sort of it's cyber slang, and it's surprising in 14 years how few people ever asked me why it's called Killing Kittens, which actually is a really ridiculous name.
Which was going to be my next question, but you've answered it.
So so that's, and I just sat there and went, right, that's it. I like the 2Ks, so from day one it was KK.
Yeah.
And I had the logo down. I wanted it 2K, so I said one day, it's going to be like the M in McDonald's, and people are going to see the 2Ks, and it's going to stand for something, and I'm going to be wearing my own knickers with that label in. So it's sort of, that's how it started, and it started as one party a month that was all masked and in different venues, and it started with 30, 40, 50 people, and every man had to be accompanied by a woman. We let single women in, and the rules were, and they still are the main rules, both on our online site and at the events, is men can't approach women they don't know. They have to wait for the women to do the approaching.
Right, okay.
And full-on sex occurs at a lot of the events. If I always say that's a byproduct, it's sort of, if people want to do that, then they can. But actually, a lot of people come along and dance around in their underwear, and that's what they feel empowered to. On that level, they don't need to. For women, it's sort of. I always said, working in the Erotica Show, sort of, and seeing all the porn stuff going on, it became very apparent that sort of sex is very different from men to women, and it's to us, it's that touch, feel, smell, ambience. Our biggest sex organ is our brain. It's sort of, it's why 50 Shades was massive, because it was all in our heads. We could create these characters and the pictures for what we wanted it to look like in our heads, whereas sort of brightly lit porn is much more a male.
Yeah.
So it's sort of that. The more I looked into it, the more that's what I was seeing, and that's how, KK came to be, and it was always very much about creating and building a community, or tribe, as I call it, and so 14 years on, and we're now considered a sex tech business because 60% of our revenue is from the online membership, online side of it, and we operate all over the world, different events, and that's it in a nutshell, really.
Yeah, got you. No, thanks for that detailed explanation. I think so. What jumps out at me there is, which is interesting, the way I introduced you about sexual liberation and empowerment, but empowerment. So just coming along and feeling empowered, whatever that looks like.
Yeah.
It's interesting. It's really interesting because nothing to do with Killing Kittens, nothing to do with you, but a lady I know separately in a different industry. She put out a post recently about sexuality and sexual empowerment, and the way that she interpreted it, and was saying that it's not about having sex.
No, I agree.
It's a feeling, and it's a feeling of empowerment. And people just, again, as soon as you say that word, sex, people, that'd be interesting, male and female, but that jumps into people's heads, and it doesn't have to be like it can be, but it doesn't have to be.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be.
That.
And it's a battle I've sort of had for 14 years, and especially with the tabloids, it's sort of the minute you have sex, you're involved in sex. That's it. They see it as sex, and it's seedy and it's sex. But actually, what we've always done is, as I said, that's the byproduct, the full-on sex. But it's everything else. And half our events don't involve taking clothes off. They're talks and workshops and panel debates, or and couples retreat weekends. So it's sort of, for us, it's sort of that just all-consuming, just everything about sexuality.
Yeah.
And which we try and cover all those bases, and it's just, even if it's just belonging on the website and being on there, and feeling like you can belong, and you can go in the chat rooms and you can speak to other members without any judgment.
So you can just be kind of part of it in whichever way you want to
exactly.
be.
I mean, we have 120,000 members online.
Wow.
And we get, our events sort of globally have between 800 and 1,000 people a month attending. So if you look at that, those numbers, you have 1,000 attending the events, 120,000 online.
Yeah.
It's not about, coming to a sex party.
Yeah, sure.
It's sort of a much bigger, I say that's the bit that, the sort of the tabloids have created, that tip of the iceberg that everyone knows about, but actually there's this whole iceberg under the water that's sort of been rising up.
Doesn't get talked about.
That is what, KK is.
Yeah, sure. So there's a couple of things there, Emma. So, with regard to something, so you said it's global. I mean, you live in London, so how do you, because you talk about rules and obviously there's an etiquette there, how do you manage that globally? How do you make sure that the brand is,
because we kind of call it sort of, we have the mothership, the site, and everything's controlled by that one site, and that's in London, and no matter what event you come to, you have to come through that one site to register to be a member.
Right.
In order to buy tickets and be part of that community. So we very much, keep control on the memberships. And then we have some hosts on the ground in the different cities that we can't, for example, Sydney, we can't just fly out there for a weekend.
Yeah.
But, we have New York every month, and actually one person from London flies out there every month.
Okay.
And we have a team on the ground. So, but the person from London, one of the events people, will fly out to oversee it.
Yeah.
And the rest of the events, all around Europe is very easy for us to go out from London to get to.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting stuff. And how do you come up with you mentioned it's masked, and how do you come up with the different themes, or do you have different themes? Each party has a theme?
No, we just have different concepts. So we have a mansion party every month in London, and that's a big mansion house, and that's kind of cocktail dress, black tie, a mass. We have champagne, oyster reception, and we might have some burlesque entertainment. So it's always the same concept. We might theme it if it's sort of Halloween or Valentine's, or it, depending on if there's something specific, but the rest of the time it's just the same.
Right. Okay.
And then our cabaret nights we do every month, and again and hedonism we do every month, and they're not kind of that it's the same, just basic mask theme, but as I said, unless there's something specific.
Yeah.
And also depending on the country. So if you're, New York quite like themes. So, we can chop and change.
Okay.
Themes out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, great. So so it's online, it's parties and it's online.
Yeah.
It's a community online and
Yeah.
it's party. That got you. And so we've talked about what it is. And this might sound a strange question in some ways, but what is it not?
It's not a sex party setup.
Mm.
You know, it often gets put in that, you know, in that group, of which there are a lot out there.
Mm.
It's not a porn site.
Mm.
You know, it's not an escort, you know, agency. A lot of people, you know, struggle to get their heads around the fact that women are perhaps buying tickets to attend these events.
Mm.
There's that kind of, it's quite a male assumption of, well, you know, they must be paid for women, guys paying for women to come with them. It's sort of, you know, that's not, you know, we're not any of those things.
Yeah, okay. I just thought it was an important point to make for exactly that reason.
Yeah.
Because people listening, you know, people jump to conclusions. It's really, you know, just listening to you, Emma, something that I saw the other day. I saw, and this might sound abstract, but it's related to something you said. I saw an interview with David Bowie that must have been, I don't know, somewhere to he probably was. It's about 10 years before he died, and he was being asked about, you know, how he created these characters like Ziggy Stardust and his fame and all this sort of stuff. And he said something I thought was really insightful. And he said, look, in the 50s and 60s, everything was just black and white.
Yeah.
That's the way it was. People just said, oh, it's either that or it's that, you know, black or it's white. And he said he sensed that in the 70s, things started to open up and there were different shades and different flavours. And, you know, it didn't have to be right and wrong.
Yeah.
It can just be different. And he said, I second guessed that and got it right when it comes to sexuality, when it comes to music, to all sorts of things. And that's something that you sort of, in some ways, it's when you think that was, how many years ago is that? I'm trying to think now.
20 years ago, 15 years
God,
ago.
more than that. So he was talking about the 70s, so he's, what,
Oh,
30,
yeah,
40, 50,
years ago, yeah, 50
40
years
plus years ago. And yet, you know, you're still facing, I'm sure, challenges and misconceptions even now.
And but on that ground, obviously I'm no David Bowie, but I get that kind of it's the second guessing. So you know, there's a difference. It was black and white, and then it's more grey. But I think a lot of the grey was a lot of the men. It was still a very patriarchal, masculine world of the greys being acceptable for men, but it still wasn't acceptable for women to be grey at all. You know, we were very, you know, it was very much, you know, really women what you expected to be and stay at home and, you know, that kind of, and not have that, you know, and actually if you did have one night stands and sleep with other people, then, you know, you did have that reputation. And so society was very much like that 14 years ago, and that whole, you know, bisexual, even the lesbian world. And, you know, we've seen, so when I launched it, I had a lot of backlash then. And, you know, I lost some friends over it who told me what I was doing was wrong and ridiculous and what would people think. And I just knew, what I hoped, that it would, where I thought the world was going, would go. And there would be a time when it was our time. Yeah. And actually sort of 3 years ago, and I was watching and I could see I looked at our business figures and realised it was sort of 50% online, offline, and thought our whole team were offline people, including me, and we were sort of blagging the tech digital side of it. And I thought, well, you know, we need people to actually who know their shit on that front to get hold of it, because the potential is massive. And as I was looking at that, the whole Me Too movement sort of happened, the Trump happened. So again, that fire was lit under the world's women. And I just thought, I went, right, this is that time. This is, you know, I've waited a decade for actually society to be ready. And with the whole digital world, you know, on the rise, in order to spread that movement and that awareness, we've got this decade and this loyal following and, you know, and community to actually go, right, it's our time. Let's just fire away before someone, you know, some Silicon Valley startup with loads of money kind of comes flying over the top of us claiming female empowerment to do what actually we could do. So that's why the last 3 years for us as a business has been sort of 1,000 miles per hour.
Right, okay.
Because that was the moment I was waiting for society to be ready. And if you look at what's happened with women's sexuality in the past couple of years, it's been huge. It's been huge in what is accepted now, and we see it much more in our couples that come along and married couples where women are, are bisexual or bi-curious, and it's allowed. It's what, it's sort of not the norm. It's just sort of, it's okay.
It's okay
to do that.
It is.
And the husbands and the partners go, it's okay.
Yeah.
It's sort of, and the women being much more vocal about actually what we want sexually without fear of being judged.
Yeah. We had, I had Orsabav on the podcast a little while ago. She's somebody that, so she quit her life in the city to set up something called Tailor Match, which I think you said you're aware of. And, hats off to her. I mean, it just, the thing that jumped out from, I mean, we covered so much as we are today here as well, but one of the things she was just saying was, it's just no big deal, it's just, when she was educating me around thruples and different things,
sex.
and just, it's just like, it's no big deal.
It's sexuality, it's how, actually, it's how we're all made up. It's sort of, it doesn't matter what religion, what culture, we're driven by our sexuality at the core. So why is it this taboo thing?
And it's interesting because, when I think about, I'm 51, so my, introduction to sex and how that came about, and it's sort of, there's a huge education process, at least I hope there is anyway, around this, to just talking about this stuff for people, the way they see it, the way they perceive it, and particularly in this country, I think, So I won't go down that route, because we'll be here all day, but I've got a quote here by you.
Uh-oh.
And in fact, I've got lots of quotes by you, but I like this one. I like them all, but I'm going to read this one out. It said, "If it doesn't bring you income, inspiration, or orgasms, it doesn't belong in your life." I love that.
Yeah, I love that one. It's true, orgasms and inspiration. It's sort of, if you've got those two things.
Yeah. I really like it. And do you know what I like about you, Emma, as well, is in amongst it all, when I read that quote on your Instagram page, and I think about 2 photos along as a picture of your toddler.
Yeah. My Instagram's a proper mashup.
Yeah, it is, exactly. But I thought, I like that. So like, this is me.
Yeah.
So here, there was a picture of you having a family meal or barbecue. You've got pictures of your kids. You've got a quote talking about kicking off your shoes after death, saying hi to Satan, and you've got all this stuff. You've got this one, and I just thought, that's just, I like that. The real, it's not like you're separating it. And
that's the thing, and I just think that's part of the problem, and it's part of that pretending to be something you're not, or worrying about what society thinks, and that you have to behave this way, otherwise you're going to be judged. It's sort of, this is what I do. Yeah. I'm a mum of 3 under 5. It's carnage. But this is the business I run, and I got asked quite a few times when I started, and I split up with a boyfriend over it, who the question was like, what are you going to tell your children that you do? When you have kids, what will you tell them that you do? And the boyfriend I had, around that time as well, he said, I don't think, what you're doing now is okay, but it's like you've got to rethink it for kids, because you can't have, the mum doing what you do. And my answer was always, I'd like to think that there will come a point when, by the time I do have children, when I get to that point, if and when, that society will have changed and will be in a completely different headspace. That actually what I do will not be necessarily normal, but it will be completely socially acceptable and needed, and that my kids will think I'm a legend and high five me, and their friends will think I'm the coolest mum. And actually, do you know what? It was at Pride. When was Pride? A few weeks ago, and we did a massive Pride picnic, and I kind of thought about it. Thought whether it's a big picnic in Green Park. Do you think it's all right to take the kids? And there wasn't one part of me that thought it's wrong. They shouldn't be doing that. And I've got an amazing video. It was on my Instagram of like my 4-year-old waving a massive Killing Kittens flag whilst walking through Hyde Park, just really proudly. And it was one of those moments that kind of gets a bit emotional, because you kind of think, I saw it and saw him doing that, and I just remembered 14 years before of the abuse and that question always being asked, and thought, actually, do you know what, it's kind of happening.
And back to not being a big deal or normalising it, whatever the right word you choose is. I guess that is what you're doing there, or what you're doing, but that's what's happening, isn't it? They're just growing up with it. Yeah. I guess it's a bit like growing up with your dad's in the Rolling Stones or something. It's just,
Yeah, exactly. No, my 4-year-old asked what Pride, we said we're going to Pride, he asked what Pride was, and I thought he's 4. I'm not going to go into great detail, but I just said, do you know what? I said it's when boys can dress up as girls and girls can dress up as boys, and they can, boys can want to be girls, and that's who they think they are. And he sort of was looking at me like that, and then I heard him say to my husband, he says, "We're going to Pride, Daddy. So when boys can dress up as girls and girls can dress up as boys." And he just walked past my husband and he just smiled at me, and I was like, well, kind of, it's what came.
Yeah.
I said, for a 4-year-old, it's a start at explaining.
Yeah. It's interesting you say that. It's a quick tangent there. So, because I've got a 7-year-old, and we have things that we talk about in the family which come up. So, obviously, I lost my son. So, that, and he took his own life. So that comes up, and he has his. And so when that happened, Geordie was 4, so he had his understanding at that time of what had happened, and we told him like straight away. We didn't hide it. But one of the things we took some advice on it around how to sort of deal with, I call it adult topic, call it whatever you want to call them, big life stuff. With young kids, and one of the things I got back, which I always remembered, was when they're old enough to ask the question, they're old enough to have an answer. And we still now use that as a guide. So if you're listening to this in 30 years, Geordie, then...
Well, exactly. Actually, my 4-year-old again asked me what our daughter, who's 2.5, what her willy's called. Said, "What's Lily's willy called? Where she pees, because it's not a willy."
Yeah.
And I thought I can make up something.
Yeah.
I went as a vagina. And as it came out of my mouth, I thought, I'm telling a 4-year-old it's called a vagina. But that's for me, that's part of the problem, making up silly names and words as if it's dirty and secret. And, it's sort of, to me, it's sort of, if you're quite straight up and what's the issue. And so it's now, he didn't quite hear it properly, so it's now vagina.
Right, okay.
So we have willies and vaginas.
In the Sayle family.
Yeah,
okay. And you don't have to answer this if you want to. So you mentioned, ex-boyfriend, clearly ex now, and his approach to it. You're now married, but you said you started this before you were married. So your husband's sort of obviously... Yeah. Did you meet him through this?
No, not at all. No. I met him through completely different world, sports world, and that's it. And he knew about it, and he very much says, and that's, part of it. It's sort of, he's let me get on with it. Yeah. Do what I do. Yeah. And Stan's very good at rolling his eyes. But, and I always say to girlfriends, it's sort of, that you're with the right person by looking at what you've achieved during that relationship. And if you've grown and gone further and achieved more things, then, there's the right person. Because I looked back and looked at a lot of my relationships and realised I'd either trod water and not actually grown as a person or work-wise, or actually gone backwards because you're worried about sort of keeping them happy. And so that's sort of always my one thing when speaking to girlfriends about their boyfriends. I don't care if they're good-looking. I'm like, well, what have you? Yeah. What are you achieving?
Have they got your best
interest
at heart?
Because if they're, if you are growing, then they've got your back and they're behind you and they're supporting you and they're letting you be you and grow, and that's all you can ask, really.
Yeah. No, I love that. Yeah. Quick entrepreneurial question then. I mean, 3 kids under 5. Yeah. And you say, so I hear that, and then I hear 1,000 miles an hour, and we're going to talk about crowdfunding in a minute. I mean, how do you manage it all?
I've got great. I would say you need teams in place. It's that community, and it kind of every aspect of my life has amazing teams, and I've kind of ensured and put real effort into doing that. So I've got an amazing work team. Yeah. That I can come and go, and if something happens kid-wise, then I've suddenly had to bugger off for a month. It wouldn't affect the running of the business. So I have an amazing work team. I have an amazing, team at home. We've got a great nursery up the road, and actually, a lot of the teachers there and the managers and sort of befriended who really can help out if things happen. And my mum, moved 10 minutes up the road when we had baby number 3, and she's very hands-on. So it's sort of on that level. And then I've got, a great group of girlfriends, and I've been running actually a group called the Sisterhood, which has sort of been going neck and neck with Killing Kittens. It's sort of the yin to my yang. And I love my ultra sports races, and we do loads of crazy races all over the world and raise lots of money for different women and children's charities. And that sort of, we've got a big WhatsApp group with about 50 of them on that. and they're my sanity support. And actually, it's a real dumping ground, that WhatsApp group, and there's no holds barred. It's sort of, everyone just puts, if people are having a bad day or anxiety or anything going on, they've all worked. Some stay-at-home mums in there. It's a complete diverse group of women from the age of 20 up till mid 50s. It's so that's the thing. I just have these teams in all the areas, so I can go 1,000 miles per hour.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting you keep second guessing on my. So I was going to say, you have diversified. I mean, so you got Sisterhood. There was a challenge across the channel. Did you do something?
Yeah, we relay swam the channel.
Wow.
4 of us.
Wow, that's a podcast in itself. Then
I know it was. It was meant to be 8 of us, and then it dropped to 6, and then the day of the race, because we were late going out, it suddenly became 4 of us, which was sort of fun.
2018 you did that?
No,
yeah?
That was this year.
This year?
Yeah, no, we did. So that was June.
Wow.
Yeah, June this year we did that.
And what was that like, Emma?
It was hard, and it wasn't really, we didn't really think about it, because we had a strategy when there was more of us. Even with 6, we were sort of going to swim an hour.
Right.
Swim an hour and then have 5 hours off.
Right.
But when it came to it, because we were down to 4, and then it was sort of got really choppy, it sort of suddenly we weren't having any rest, and we were doing half hours and just in and out.
Right.
So
wow.
But I mean, it was an amazing thing to do. We got to a mile off the shore of France. We didn't set foot in France. So people were like, well, you didn't make it. We were like, well, we swam 28 miles. So it was a roundabout route.
I think you're allowed to punch those
exactly.
people.
And to us, that was, is but it's that what defines success. It's sort of, is success having to touch French soil, or is success for us as we still did it with only 4 people, one of which only started swimming in October. Our aim was to raise 15 grand for the Sick Children's Trust, which we did.
Yeah.
And we swam 28 miles, and actually it's only 21 miles across, so I don't know where those extra 7 miles came from. So so to us it was a success, and we'll take that.
Yeah. No, 100%. And something again that you'll kind of talk about for the rest of your days. I mean, that's right up there in not many people. It's quite an exclusive club, that I would imagine. You've also got something called Safe Date.
So Safe Date's an app we launched last summer. It's sort of within the Killing Kittens setup. It was tech we were building into our new platform, and it came off the back of a lot of our members in the groups, so the girls only chat groups. They'd be going on Tinder dates or just any kind of dates, and telling the girls in the group where they were going and saying, if we don't check back into this group, then send out a search party. This is where we're going to be.
Right.
So we were building that sort of technology into our platform where you could put in all the details of where you're going.
Yeah.
And check back. If you didn't check back in, then your safe people get sent a message saying so-and-so had you as their safe person and haven't checked back in. And then we just decided that it was a much bigger entity, and actually it's something that could be good for school kids.
Yeah.
So we took it out of the Killing Kittens world, the adult world, and made it sort of a mainstream app that actually kids and parents can download.
So that's just there, you can download it from the App Store.
Yeah, exactly. So that sort of sat there, and I think we've had nearly 10,000 people download that. We haven't done a huge amount. It's just sort of sat there. And once we've got our whole platform built, then we are adding different bits to it, like the WhatsApp and GPRS tracking and that kind of other bits to it.
Yeah. Okay. Fantastic. Wow. So back to 1,000 miles an hour. You've just done your second round of crowdfunding. Yeah. Completed. Congratulations on that. 118% in 4 days. No, I've got mixing them up now.
We've left it open. So we wanted 300,000. I think we're on nearly, and we got that in 4 days. And we've left it open because a lot of our members want to be involved. So we're leaving it open an extra few weeks, and I think we're up to 400. Now. So.
And just tell us a bit what was behind I know we were chatting before the podcast, but what was behind the crowdfunding and.
So we did the first one last summer. And as I said earlier, it was suddenly looking at our figures and realizing that it was sort of go big or go home time, and we needed to do it. And so for the first time in the history of KK, need that investment because technology isn't cheap and the digital world isn't cheap. So it's sort of everything had been coming out of the cash flow, just sort of never had investment before. And so it was sort of, at the beginning of last year, looking at had guy, Hadley, come on board. He's our COO and complete tech and digital guru, very much the yin to my yang. And we were just discussing the different ways, and the obvious, the initial route was the VCs and private investors, and it just wasn't sitting comfortably. It just didn't feel right. And we had this huge community, and we'd approached like Seeders and Crowdcube sort of the year before just to test the water, and been very much told that we probably wouldn't be able to do it because we're an adult brand, and neither of them had ever done an adult brand. But maybe we might be able to give in a private platform. So sort of a year on, we approached them again, and suddenly, society has changed, and they both wanted us and wanted to be the platform that has the first adult industry brand raising money publicly. So we went down the Seeders route and put it out to our community of members. And that's what's happened. So we raised sort of nearly 600,000 last year. And then, the 300 now, we've doubled the valuation in a year. So it was 5 million last summer, and then a year later it's now 10 million valuation. So
back to your quote about income and orgasms.
Exactly. Although I just focus on the inspiration and the orgasms, and I've never been a money person. It's sort of just it kind of it's still hearing the figures and just like it's not something I really think about.
But I think that's really good. I believe that. Because sometimes you're saying, but you hear this in business, what's the purpose? Well, the purpose is to make a profit. And I'm like, no, that's the outcome. The purpose is, if you have a strong purpose and strong passion to create something amazing, then you will generate.
That's why I say profit. The money is a byproduct. It's like if you do what you love and are passionate and you put everything into it, then it will just come. So without even really thinking about it. And that's kind of what's happened. Even in the last year, I haven't really noticed. It's just focusing on the advocacy, and everything we do follows the same experience and attention to detail, and growing it and growing the online side of it. So that's what I think about. And actually we're going to do a big Series A raise next year, fundraise, which will have private investors in it. It will be a mix of the two. Because for that, that's really go big and go home, and looking at sort of actually owning our own venues and things like that. So.
Well, okay. I was just about to ask you where do you see it all going? So owning venues.
So that kind of it's if you sort of the Soho House meets Playboy brand. So you've got that. There's a brand, but that female brand, but you've got the offline and online. They are very much. It's sort of all consuming. All elements of it. I mean, it could go, and once you've got that, then there's just so many avenues you can go down. The whole, products are an obvious one.
Merchandising and
exactly. Which are easy to do, and we've already started doing little bits. On that front.
Fantastic stuff. And I mean, it's an incredible story, Emma. And 14 years. Well, 14 years. Congratulations, because I mean, some new companies don't last 14 months. And. I mean, has it all been literally from the minute you let the touch paper sort of like, upwards trajectory, or did you have moments in the early days where you had your head in the hands thinking?
I think, do you know what? If you looked at it on paper, there's always been a growth.
Right.
It was great. I mean, we launched before the digital kind of world came in, so we didn't really, that whole Facebook, Instagram, that digital marketing side it was very much old school word of mouth. Right. Networking, gradual growth, and as the digital world has has not crept in, it's sort of to the face appeared. That's kind of made the growth much quicker. So I think to me, so if you looked at it as a business on paper, it's continually grown. There hasn't been any points where it's like crap. We're going to lose everything. We're going to go bust. It's been this gradual growth, and then suddenly a sort of exponential. Growth in the last sort of 5 years, each year almost doubling. But I think to be honest, the biggest hits and it has been more the nature of what it is, and the abuse I've sort of had, and that kind of, you can't be that powerhouse every single day. So you're gonna have days where you're like head in hands going, what the hell am I doing?
Yeah.
You know, can I actually take this
Yeah.
for much longer? So, you know, you have days like that. And, you know, I still have days like that.
Yeah.
Where you just go, what are you doing?
Yeah.
How did you get in this position? And someone might say something, and you know, I've got a pretty sort of call it my invisible force field, where it just sort of bounces off, you know, comments. But you know, it can't be up the whole time. And you know, when you go down or you're knackered or being a little bit insecure, it's sort of the odd comment will get through.
Yeah.
And you can't help that.
Yeah, you're human. Yeah, of course.
So I let it through, think about it, and then kick it out again.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. I mean, and you must have, you know, I mean, you must have attracted criticism and adversity in the 14 years. We were chatting before about, you know, a radio interview you had that was particularly brutal. And what sort of stuff do you? I've already asked you that actually, but I mean, so clearly you've had to deal with a lot, and I guess you still do, but you've got the support. Because you mentioned you lost a friendship over it, but clearly you got the support of immediate family and family around you, which must be massive.
Yeah,
as well.
and to me, I always say that, you know, I've got an amazing group of friends and family, and I value what they think.
Right.
But often, even with that, sometimes you'll get comments from friends and stuff, and I'm quite quick to look at what's going on in their life and see that projection. So, you know, a decade ago, I wouldn't be able to see that. I think that's something that you get as you get older, that self-awareness, and being able to actually be aware of what's going on in everyone else's lives and the emotions in their lives. I wonder
where that comes
that
from.
comment isn't for me. They're projecting, and it's actually something going on in their own lives. So I'm sort of, again, quite quick to sort of be able to do that and bat it. It away.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because we were chatting beforehand, before the podcast, about, I think I was talking about what I do. And so you're in the adult industry, I'm in whatever you want to call it, the personal development industry, self-help industry. And I don't know what it's like in your sector, but there are a lot of people saying a lot of things, and there's a lot of preaching. You know, this is the way, you know, do this, follow this. 7 steps to whatever it is, happiness, success.
Their way's the only way.
Yeah, the sort of gurus, and I always believe that there is no one way. There's no overnight success. There's no hack. There's no, and people, you know, should be able to take bits from wherever they want. And you know,
and it's very personal. It's sort of everyone's different, and everyone functions in different ways. And success, like I said earlier, you know, the channels were made that, you know, success is very different to different people, and I think you need to work out what success is to you and what that, you know, 100%. what makes you happy, and it's not necessarily going to be what makes your best mate happy. And until you realise that, it's very difficult. You ever thought about becoming a coach?
That's a classic, but you're absolutely right. You know, that's like, what do you want?
I think I think they've done, you know, help a few people out, mentor a few people, and I think it's not something I'll go, I'm a coach of. I think it's just, you know, it has been a long old journey, and it's a long old journey of self-awareness as well, and finding myself in the process, that actually then you can go on and help. I don't think being a coach comes from reading loads of books.
No.
You know, and going, right, I'm now a coach, or getting qualifications that enables you to be a coach. It comes from life experiences and learning yourself. I think then you can go out and, you know, just tell people your experiences, and they can take what they want from it. Because their way is going to be different. So,
No, listen, I hear you totally, and I agree. I think absolutely life experience and perspective and all those good things. And I think, it's just, it's really interesting hearing you say that. I think when I very first got my certificate, and I was all sort of like recently qualified. And I was, you know, done like an NLP. And I remember thinking, right.
NLP is amazing, though. NLP. That you can get a certificate for.
And I applied for this role, which I got really excited. Somebody put me onto it, and it was 1 day a week, and it was in this kind of incubator academy in East London for young artisans and mentoring them. And I thought, this is great. This has got me written all over it. And I was just starting out. And I went through this very rigorous and very formal interview process. I won't name the academy because it's still going. by this, and I was interviewed by this girl. She turned out she was 26, was she 26, 27, life coach, and I'm being told I didn't have enough experience. And
don't get me started on the words life and coach.
Yeah, and yeah, this is where I shuffle uncomfortably. And
you've had experience.
But yeah, and I thought, wow, a kind of part of me wanted to go, how can you be a life coach at 26?
Yeah, I don't think you can't. I don't think you can.
And that probably sounds really judgmental. And I remember being sort of knocked back for about 3 days, thinking, "Oh, this is going to be harder than I thought." But no, it's just interesting but again, by her criteria, I didn't tick the box.
Yeah.
Because I was recently qualified, and interesting. You took me off on a tangent there, but listen, it's really, really. I really admire what you're doing, Emma. I think anybody that's passionate about, I'm always interested, it's always my first question for people when I meet them is what you're passionate about, and clearly you are really passionate about it, and you've but you've also acted on that, and you've created something amazing, and the fact that you are also pioneering something that many would consider taboo, less and less we hope going forward, and you still do it and you're pushing on. I just really admire people that do that. And so where can people find you?
On our site is wearekk.com, so or just killingkittens.com.
Right.
It's similar, the two sites sort of feed in together.
So wearekk.com,
or just killingkittens.com.
Yeah. And the Sisterhood thing, that's a separate thing? Is that a private thing?
So the Sisterhood group is sort of the fun sports group. That's just sisterhood.org.uk, I think. But the business spin-off of Sisterhood is Sistr, SISTR app.com, and that's we launched that 2 months ago, and it's a big platform, community platform, and sort of networking and mentoring for professional women.
Okay.
We have big sisters and little sisters, and we're launching a whole series of events from September on that front. So yeah.
SISTR.
Yeah. It's
Okay.
like the hip tech way to spell sister.
Yeah. Drop the vowel. Can you tell us a bit more about that? That sounds really interesting.
So that sort of has come off. The names come off the back of the Sisterhood. And it's sort of very much, as I said, the teams of people I've got around me and that social group, and the way we've always operated. And, as I said, there's girls from every kind of industry. But if someone's up to creek, needs a lawyer or needs HR advice or is on a downer or needs a psychologist, there's someone in there. And it's sort of that combined with our CEO had this sort of platform, this mentoring platform that had been built by previous tech companies. It was just sort of sat there. So we just decided to merge the two and make it a network and a platform for women, professional women, to connect. But again, to me, it's about that community and that sense of belonging. And it's not one of those female networking setups that's specifically for a certain industry.
Yeah.
It's every industry from every walks of life. And we've had. And, a funny example is, I was out, I love strip clubs, and I was out in the strip club about 4 a.m. I was I was talking to one of the girls, one of the dancers, and she was telling me, I just love this, the stories, and she was telling me she's a single mum, putting herself through law school, and that's why she's dancing to get the money, but doesn't know any other lawyers, and I said, oh, hang on a minute, give me your number, and the next day I introduced her to, amazing woman, Kate Briscoe, who founded Legal Beagles, which is the world's biggest online legal website. And because I knew she was a single mum very early doors at 20 and put herself through law school, and again trailblazing, saw a niche, and launched. And I said, can you help? And they're now in contact all the time. And Kate's been massively helping her out, and they've got scary coincidences. Their sons are both called Jasper, and the same. They kept kind of, when they had their first conversation. Yeah, it was one of those freaks of fate.
Yeah. Okay.
But to me, that's what Sistr is about. It's women from all walks of life.
Yeah.
And professional women. Who just need that. Some might need some advice or mentoring, and And you keep the two very separate. Is there crossover between the two? There's crossover in that, a lot of our membership, a lot of the Killing Kittens membership, it's very female membership based, a lot of it. And a lot of them are professional women. So a lot of them have become sisters and vice versa. So, there is that crossover.
Yeah, wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful stuff. And it's really interesting hearing talk about community, because community is a word that's come up a lot, obviously today. And you've probably seen that there's a chain of bars called Brewdog.
Yeah.
Have you seen them?
They did their big raid, didn't they?
That's right. Yeah, it made me think a little bit. A lot of people listening to this, I say a lot, a few are from my old sector, which is the hospitality sector, my old life. Well, actually not really, but I spent a lot of years in it. Brewdog have sort of certainly right now, very successful, held up as a very successful brand, and they, their community, they call them punks, and they said that I read a quote from the CEO that said the whole crowdfunding thing was less about raising money and it was about building a community.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's what it's done for them, and they've, and it's, so it's an interesting thing that you say there, and you must have read Tribes by Seth Godin, have you?
Yeah,
I
have.
Yeah,
also good. Yeah,
great book.
They've always got that thing from day one of KK. I've always, said it's my tribe.
Yeah,
my people. And in fact, actually, Instagram, you'll see a lot of hashtag my tribe or find your tribe.
Yeah, that's what I refer to my followers. Smash the Box tribe. Yeah, interesting. And what sort of reaction have you had from the adult sector? Because you mentioned at the very top of the podcast, you said you started out, you were involved in the Erotica. Show, yeah. Did you get a reaction from them? Do they ignore you?
No, to start with, there is a slight backlash. There's that, there are people in the adult world, there's some funny creatures in there who see me as an outsider and an imposter, because I'm not, in the scene myself. Right. I'm not, the swinging person, and into my sex parties personally, and I haven't come from that world.
Right.
So there's an element of that, and then you get the the element, because it is so patriarchal, that there's that the controlling male in the world who run a lot of the industry in there, who sort of, it's that feeling threatened. I've got their backs up.
Right.
So I hear stuff a lot about me. But again, it doesn't.
Yeah,
it doesn't bother me.
You see that when you hear stuff like whatever you're getting, that tells me you're onto something.
Yeah, no, well, exactly. I always say that if someone so and so said this about you and that, and I'm like, I've never met them, but actually the fact people are talking about me, then I'll take that. It's when they stop talking about me. Isn't there a Churchill quote? There's something about
there's Gandhi that said first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, then you win.
Yeah,
that was Gandhi. But back on music, I read I was watching a documentary about Oasis. I think it's the Supersonic documentary, where he said they were touring around. This about 2 years before they sort of broke. So they were touring around the UK in this van, and he said we were just totally ignored. He said nobody wrote up. He said I just wanted someone to write a review saying we're shit.
Yeah, exactly. That thing.
And he said, but no, we were just ignored. And then suddenly, Alan McGee found them in a nightclub in Glasgow, and the rest. Well,
there's that no such thing as bad publicity.
Yeah. But
always thought that.
And Eminem, while we're on quotes, was it Eminem said, "So people are criticising you, good. That means you stand for something," which you definitely do, and that's great. And okay. So look, Emma, it's been a real blast. It's been really, really interesting interviewing you, and I really appreciate you just doing what you're doing and being so open about it all. If you had to leave us, I've got two questions first, because you've been doing this 14 years. I mean, any advice for your younger self? What would Emma now tell Emma 14 years ago? Or even earlier?
I would say listen to your mother. No, to me, it was more my 20s where I worried way too much about what people thought of me. That I spent a lot of time worrying about that. And I would say don't ignore the haters. They just feel threatened by you. So take that as a compliment rather than, the opposite. That's the big one.
Yeah.
To me, yeah.
And your one thing, if you had to leave us with one thing, what would it be?
Fuck it.
What
just
a
do
great
it,
way,
basically.
Fuck it, just do it. What a great way to end. Emma, it's been a blast. Like I said, it's been really, really interesting. It's been fun.
Thank you for listening. You have something special inside you, something unique, and there's never been a better time to reinvent yourself, to find your purpose, live your passion, and make your mark on the world. So if you've been inspired by this podcast, head over to smashthebox.me and subscribe to the tribe to get your daily boost of inspiration delivered straight to your inbox. Find me on the usual social media channels by typing Smash the Box Mark Pitcher. Don't just think outside the box, it's time to smash the box.